Welcome to ABE 474, Indoor Environmental Control. My name is Angela Green and I'm the instructor for the course. We're going to start with just a brief introduction to the idea of environmental control. We're going to talk a little bit about the disciplines that come together in order to do analysis and design of environmental control systems. And we'll spend a few minutes talking about some applications, facilities, environments in which we will be working as we cover the material for this course. So, as I said, this is AB 474, Indoor Environmental Control, and this is just an introduction. So, terminology, controlled environment, you might also hear it called the built environment, brings together a number of different disciplines that we have, most of you should have at this point worked with in your fundamental engineering courses. So we're bringing together physics, thermodynamics, psychrometrics. For those of you that may not have heard of psychrometrics before, it's the study of moist air properties, and we are going to spend some time with that this semester. Refrigeration, control theory. So these are just some of the basic engineering principles we'll bring together. It's also important to be able to understand the system that you're working in, so we need to have some knowledge of other subject areas as well that are not necessarily founded in engineering. For example, we need to know a little bit about weather phenomena, because that has an impact on the environment that we're trying to control. Environmental biology. So for this class, we are, as we discuss environmental control, we are going to be looking at analysis of systems that are occupied by biological organisms. So it's important to understand a little bit about the occupants of our systems. So for the most part, our examples are going to consist of applications for plants and animals, and humans are animals. So we'll have human applications and mostly agricultural agricultural applications and examples. So it's important to understand a little bit about the occupants, but also the type of system those occupants are housed within. So we'll have, like I said, some agricultural examples, so we'll talk a little bit within livestock systems, as well as for plants within greenhouse systems. With respect to the type of facilities that we might be considering that we would want to control the environment within, I like to break those down into two categories. So facilities or environments that we're going to work within. I typically break them down into human or non-human applications. Now the reason I do this is that the design constraints for human versus non-human applications are primarily different based on the economics. So for example, people are willing to pay for comfort. So within the people category, typically there's a bit more economic flexibility. And in the non-people category, our environmental control tends to be based more on function as opposed to comfort. When we get to this section, well, as we move through the material for the course, we'll have a little better understanding of that. So within the people category, there are a number of ways to break down considerations for human environments, and I have them classified into 4 categories. So houses and residential, workplaces, which could include things like classrooms, recreational facilities, and then we're going to have a category that's for kind of special cases that we're going to call other. And the reason they're broken down like this, if we think about houses and residential, this is relatively low density in terms of the number of occupants, and the activities tend to be pretty sedentary, and even when they're not, the density is low enough that the contributions are still relatively small. The contributions of the occupant are relatively small. When we start looking at workplaces and classrooms, these facilities are going to be a little more densely populated. The activities typically are still somewhat sedentary, though there might be some consideration of some more active activities. And then contributions may also come from other items in the environment. So for example, computers or other equipment that might be contributing things to the environment. Then when we start to look at recreational facilities, we're looking at much more densely occupied things, so such as workout facilities where you have more people in the space, but also activities that tend to be creating greater contributions to the environment from the occupants. We might also think about venues for entertainment, venues for sports, again, where we have much more densely populated. And then other, like I said, is kind of the catch-all for special cases. If we start to look at the non-people category, this is going to include some of the agricultural applications that I referred to earlier. So we might be looking at mechanically ventilated barns. We could look at naturally ventilated barns. And these are going to be for animals, but we can also have similar type facilities for plants as well. So I'm just going to lump those together for greenhouses, but those could be greenhouses. Those could also be mechanically or naturally ventilated. And whenever we're talking about these in terms of environmental control, we're more interested whenever this is in intensive production. So intensive livestock or horticultural production. And again, this gets back to the environmental control challenge comes when you begin to have more dense populations of your occupants. Okay. So not only in our growing areas are we interested, but we could also be interested in environmental control within horticultural, so it could be live species, or post-processing, so we could be interested in the product itself, in storage, and it could be storage in a holding area, or it could be storage for transport. As we move a little bit away from production type agriculture, we could be interested in growth chambers, so specialized growth chambers for plants or animals. And as we move even further, we could start to think about things like laboratories. We could think about zoos. And if we kept thinking, we could continue our list of potential needs for animal housing. We could also move into aquaculture, so fish production in a controlled environment. And we could start to look at systems where we have a combination of both plants and animals. So aquaponics, fish and plants together. So that gives us a little bit of an introduction just to kind of focus our thoughts and get us in the mindset to start thinking about how do we provide controlled environments, how do we think about providing the environment that's necessary for comfort and health and safe places, safe indoor environments for people and for non-people. The next installment will be related to terminology, and then we'll continue to move through the semester, so stay tuned.